evening and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I should be saying welcome to actually the reboot of Money Talk with Melanie. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm trying not to be like too super duper comfortable. Hi everybody in the Facebook chat. Because I am in a very comfortable area today. If you caught the little promo video a little earlier, you know that I'm coming to you remotely from the beautiful DMV, which is the slang for Delaware, Maryland, DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, as I'm attending a conference in DC. But I'm very happy. There was no way in the world I was going to cancel this show. So I'm excited to be here, and thank you everybody who is already in the Facey chat. The new structure of the show is going to be 2 hours on Friday from 5 to 7, and nothing says I have no social life more than, you know what, I think I'm going to change my show to 5 to 7 on Friday night. I'm just kidding. only kind of kidding. But I have two guests today. Melanie's really does still exist. For those of you who are listening live on SHR Media, I am also streaming live on Facey and Facebook, which Facey is my little nickname for Facebook. So if you are wondering what I'm talking about when I'm referring to people in the Facebook chat, that is what it is. Feel free to join me there. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. The first hour is going to be with my guest will be international speaker and author on workforce performance, Marc W. Schwartz. Very excited to have him on the show. We're going to talk about his book Power Shift, and it's a very I'm excited to talk about this topic, especially after doing some research on the book and reading the prologue and stuff. I'm a little bit stoked. And then the second hour, even more reason to be stoked, right? Is a return guest, the one and only Trudy Beerman, who is coming out with a new book. She's the Profitable Christian Strategist. And she's also a Facey friend. She became a Facebook friend of mine the last time she was a guest on the show. But she's fantastic and just like full of energy. So I'm excited to have her on the show as well. Herb, you if you don't sit through 2 hours, no, you'll be here in spirit, Herb. Listen, I know 2 hours is a long time. I get it. And if you guys want to, you guys have to come in and out. I get it. I appreciate you spending 5 minutes of your time, 3 minutes, a minute, just listening to whatever you can glean of value from the show. I do. Time is valuable. I totally get it. Generally, when I listen to shows and stuff like this, I put it under another tab and listen to it while I'm doing other work, like super multitasking. So I get it. We're all busy. So anytime you spend with the Business Diva, I am really appreciative, and that's from the heart. Speaking of which, if you are not following me on Facebook at Money Talk with Melanie, the Facebook page, that is actually my show page. That is where I tend to post financial news and updates and things like that. Now, there are people that think where I'm streaming live, Melanie Teresa, is my page. And which, the reason why I'm giggling is because it's not my page. Listen, social media for me is a place where I can kind of kick back and relax and get away from the world a little bit. The world, I'm an independent financial professional. I'm involved in politics way too heavily, and I need a place to kick back and sometimes be silly, and sometimes just say whatever it is that I want. And I filter a lot. Like, I'm surprised how much grief I get. But it's on my personal page. Melanie Teresa is my personal page. But I stream the show here and usually post it on the show page because this is where most of you guys are. This is where the people are. Be silly to be over on my show page by myself. I'm just saying. That would just be silly. So, but this is actually my personal page. Sandy Jones Hamilton said she just found the business page. It's funny, and I mention that because I posted something about this not too long ago, and someone was like, "This isn't your show page?" And I was like, "No, this is my personal page." Someone like kind of slammed me for having silly posts on my page, and I was like, "Well, because I'm a scholar. Well, I'm an academic. I'm an adjunct professor." And this other adjunct professor was like, "You're a professor. You shouldn't be being silly." And I was like, I think that silly and professor can reside all in the same person. I am proof that is a fact. But she legit unfriended me. So what are you going to do? But because she did not think I was serious enough about the world. But I do plenty. Oh my gosh, Al Ashworth and Shirley Hussar are here. Stop playing. Shout outs to those two. How are you? I hope you guys are doing well. Show hosts in their own right, and whenever they are here, I honestly feel privileged. So I appreciate it very much. Doug Poss, who is my unpaid Money Talk with Melanie intern and promotions person. Like literally when I'm slacking, Doug is like posting my show stuff. So I have to give a shout out to Doug for providing that service without me having to ask. Your wife's a lucky woman. I just want to, like, side note, like, every woman's fantasy is not having to ask. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just saying that. And Doug posts my stuff, shares my stuff when I'm, like, super busy, and he noticed that I'm MIA. You had no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing on the air, Al. Al's fantastic. I love you too, Shirley. But, no, seriously, Doug is fantastic for doing that, and I just want to give a shout-out to Doug and tell him that I appreciate that. To the point where Money Talk with Melanie fans are like, "Hey, is Doug here?" Like, come on, Doug is like an honorary, like, co-host or something. But he does a great job, and I do absolutely appreciate it. I mean that. So, without further ado, we're going to take a quick commercial break. The first of two new Ron Edwards notebook is coming your way right now. But before I go to the break, I got to say hi to my girl, Kim Sharp, real quick. Hey, Kim. We're going right to a brand new Ron Edwards notebook right now.
Florida Democrat gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum may accuse Republican candidate Ron DeSantis of racism because he used the words "monkey up" in his warning against voting for the Bernie Sanders anointed candidate. That's pretty sad, but that may be the best the Democrat can offer. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards on today's page from the Edwards Notebook. Think about it. Republican Ron DeSantis wants to further improve Florida's booming economy, reduce burdens and regulations, help protect against illegal immigration, etc. On the other hand, Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, hopes to increase Florida corporate tax rates, force taxpayers to fund a Florida single-payer medical care boondoggle, abolish ICE, and unite Floridians behind open borders. Gillum has already accused DeSantis of being divisive like Trump, because, like Trump, he wants to end illegal immigration. Yep, the leftist Democrat might have a slightly better chance of becoming Florida's governor by screaming racism than by campaigning to slow economic growth, stopping no limits on illegal immigration, and abolishing ICE. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us and SHR Media. Also Sunday midnights on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how legally hiring your spouse and children can slash your taxes. Learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the benefits of setting up an exit plan, how to avoid getting audited, and how to legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Visit TaxMama.com. Click on Ask a Tax Question to get free answers to your tax and business questions. That's TaxMama.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. I want to thank everybody for being in the Facey Chat. Somebody commented on my necklace. I think it was Kim. I just want to give a shout out to the National Federation of Republican Women. And if anyone wants to know, whenever you see me with any of my elephant stuff on or my Republican stuff, that's Federation bling. It's not like branded Federation bling, but if you're part of the Federation and you participate in their events, every event there's a jewelry person there who sells like Republican elephant jewelry, and that's like, if you want to know the secret behind my my bling, that's the secret. is Federation. Oh, showing my legs. I don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't break the internet. Anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, my first guest of the day, who is the one and only Mr. Marc Schwartz. He is a speaker and author on workforce performance. He's got a brand new book coming out called Power Shift. He's going to tell us a lot about that. I'm so excited about this topic. It's awesome. He's been on a journey that's put him in front of more than 50,000 people in 38 countries to speak, coach, and train leaders and managers on how to use influence to break through barriers that stand in the way of getting optimal performance from their team members. He says that influence, not power or force, is the key to creating a really effective and engaging multi-generational approach, and this is the part that we're probably going to focus on, to the next evolution of business leadership. He should know because Marc has had 7 jobs in 12 years as he sought to find a job and a boss that could optimize his natural strengths instead of force him into the old my way or the highway approach to leading people. So I'm very excited to introduce, without further ado, Mr. Marc Schwartz. How are you?
Melanie, you know what? I hope someday you come out of your shell. You seem like such a kind of low-key person.
It's true. I'm very shy. Very shy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, very, very difficult
that's
to get
great.
my opinion on things. Oh, thank you so much for being here. Listen, so is there anything that I left out of your bio that you'd like to share with the audience?
The only other thing I could think of is that one of the key topics, focus points is that I feel like my goal in at this point in life is to start to bring and shed light on the idea that the old way of leading is no longer applicable. In other words, that hierarchical sort of top-down, and as you mentioned earlier, the my way or highway approach, no good, no more. Especially as people evolve and we start to reveal our hardwiring, but especially, and I know you mentioned that you wanted to talk about this, especially as millennials come into the workforce and start changing the dynamics. So we're looking to evolve leadership as it was from what it used to be to a newer form.
Indeed. And I think that's really important. I mean, many of the people who listen to my show are entrepreneurs. You know, they own businesses and they're working with millennials. And, you know, when I was reading the preview of your book and it talked about, what was the stat? I was like, whoa, what was the stat that here it is. By 2025, millennials will dominate the workplace. And since core values remain relatively constant over time, learning to meet them where they are is not an option. Can I tell you something that gave me chills, particularly as an educator? That statistic alone gave me a little bit of a heartburn. Just saying.
Can I ask why? Because I think that's an important piece. I'm curious, what was it? Did it give you good heartburn or not so good heartburn?
Well, I will tell you, not so good heartburn, because they tend to just think so differently than us old heads. And I'll say us old heads as in me. I'm not going to claim anybody else as an old head. But I just turned 48 last week, and I have a very traditional, I dare say it, authoritarian approach to management that I think is good. And that could be because I'm a card carrying Christian conservative, and that could be part of it. It's like, because God said so do it. You know what I mean. So that could be the problem. But millennials don't think that way. I don't know. So that's why I was like, oh God, more millennials. I don't know.
No.
So
well, just like every generation, Melanie, every generation has their values, their underlying foundational beliefs, and frankly, they're not going to change. They'll evolve just like we did, and I don't know if you're a boomer. I'm a boomer. I don't know if you're a Gen Xer or if you're a millennial. It doesn't really matter, but every generation has their belief system and their underlying values, and those do not change. And to think that we're going to change millennials is absolutely not only incorrect, but we're in denial.
But Marc, what if I really, really want to, though? I'm just kidding.
then it shall be, Melody. You're strong enough to will it to happen.
I can make it happen. My water bottle says "Win with Republican women." I can change millennials. No, I can't change millennials. You're right. You're probably right about that. So what can we do then? So somebody like me, who's like, because I said, I'm an adjunct professor, and now they give you pushback. Like when I was in school. When I was in undergraduate school in particular, and especially on my master's, the reason why you did stuff is because your professor said so. And I literally had to have a meeting with a student to say again, like, the reason why I want you to do this is because I said so, because it says Professor Melanie, and I said so. And when you get to be the professor, you can say so. Like, I hate to go there, but, like, that's how it works. But we have to do it differently. So, Marc, what's your advice for somebody like me who says you have to do it because I say so?
Well, I guess the question, Melanie, would come down to this. Can we just, can I ask you some very personal questions? And I don't mean like real personal, but I mean, where do you feel like you got that strategy on how to lead or manage another person? Where did that come from for you?
Well, okay. Now, I will say this. I think that I am more, I think I got it from two places. From some very strict parents. And I think that benefited me. Now, was I thrilled at the time? No, I was not. I think I got it from probably my Christian background as well. But I'm joking when I say that I'm quite that abrupt and like mean about it. I'm not. I'm pretty easygoing. But then after I finish all the easygoing stuff and you're like not complying, like my final straw is okay. I said so, and we're finished here. Like I've explained to you the reasons why. I've gone through and explained the process and the ramifications of not doing it the way I asked, and I've already done all that. And then, like, when you don't understand it, well, part of the reason why you don't understand that is because you don't have the education and experience that I do. That's why I'm the boss. So that's why I get to be the boss. And when you have the education and experience that I have, then you get to be the boss. And then you can tell people what to do. But you're saying that I can't do that.
Well, I'm not saying at all that
I'm just kidding.
Do that.
You're saying it's not effective.
Is when you look at people, well, of course, let me go back to a Dr. Phil question. How's that working for you? Right?
That's true. In the classroom, it works well. In the classroom as a secondary teacher, it does not work well. In the classroom as a professor, it tends to work very well. I rarely ever do that in my leadership responsibilities that I have politically. I don't. I tend not to do it that way.
Why not?
Because it's not very effective.
Okay.
But I don't work with a lot of millennials, and I think I don't lead a lot of millennials, but I tend to think that if I did, that it would come down to, like, even I'm the vice president of my state Republican Women's chapter. I think that after I've explained it and that we're all volunteers and I appreciate your hard work, but I really need you to do it this way. I'd really appreciate it if you did it this way. And you didn't, then you would no longer be a volunteer for me anymore. I'd find someone else.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. And here's two schools of thought, okay?
Yes.
One is there's not a lot. If the house is on fire, you're not going to sit everybody down and have a consensus conversation, right?
Correct.
Basically, if you're under time, if there's regulation issues, if there's potential danger on the forefront, you're not going to sit down and negotiate things. It's if you, in fact, have the ability to become a leader at that moment, then so do it, okay? Nobody wants you to change that. In an emergency, under tight time constraints, etc. Now, let's just say that isn't the case. Let's just say we've got business as normal, whether they're volunteers or whether they're true employees that work for you. Here's the thing. One of this whole top-down command and control approach is hundreds of years old. And the point here is that human beings have evolved. We've evolved over hundreds of years, and the things that drove us and that we had to be concerned about are not the same things that drive us and that we have to be concerned about now. If you were going to tell me, the Tyrannosaurus is bearing down on me, let's get out of here, okay? But we don't have that same thing now. What we have are people that, especially if you're dealing with knowledge workers, you can't put pressure. You can't stress them. As a matter of fact, right now, Melanie, there's a stat out there that says 70 to 75% of the workforce is disengaged on an average day from their work or their job.
Did you just, wait a minute.
75%, Melanie. That's a huge figure.
It is, but did you just say that you can't stress them?
No, I didn't say that. Right now, people are under such stress that is the reason that people resort back to, okay, you need to do it as I say. I'm not going to give you the opportunity to think through this. We need to get this done. I didn't say you can't stress them. What I said is that most of us are already under stress.
Okay, that's true.
On an average day, right? On an average day, most of us are operating under stress such that we are actually not able to optimize our full conscious and subconscious and our skill set and our competencies. So, that's why we, again, may default back to this. It feels like the house is on fire. So we've got to basically go out, okay, I want this done. See you on Tuesday. Tell me, and if you need anything in the meantime, check with me, but I want it done by Tuesday. Instead of saying, you know what, here's the project. Are there any questions? Let me know. How can I support you? Use the skills and competencies that I've hired you for, because you know what? I really don't want to babysit you, and I really don't want to have to tell you what to do, because if you're doing that, you've hired the wrong person. Does that make sense?
That I agree with 150%, and I don't like to be micromanaged, and exactly. Consequently, I try not to micromanage people. It's like, here's the task at hand. That's right. This is what the result that I'd like to see. Right. And this is when it's due. Let me know if there's any way I can, let me know if you have any questions or there's any way I can help. That's right. Pretty much leave it at that. But now if I get 50 questions about, well, why does it have to be this and why does it have to be that, I'll tell you. And I'll tell you. But then once I tell you, we're done. Because I already told you.
Well, which then leads me to the question of, what if somebody's style is a little bit different and they do need, there's executives, people that are in leadership position or management positions, they're famous for what we call Swiss cheese communication. And that means that they will tell a certain amount of information, but there's still big holes around this, and they think they've communicated really effectively, when in fact the person on the receiving end has only gotten 1/3 of what was said or requested. And if they come back and ask questions, then the leader looks at them like, well, you're stupid, B, you're incompetent, or C, I must have made a wrong hire. When in fact none of that is true, because again, maybe it's just a different style. And you have a certain style, very obviously, move forward, get the job done. But what if somebody maybe has a little bit different take on it? Maybe they're more, as we call it, kinesthetic or feeling-oriented. They'll do the job. They just need to have a little bit more of that Swiss cheese filled in. Does that help?
Yeah, it really does. You actually just said one of my trigger words. Yeah, kinesthetic as a. Yeah. Well, no, it's very interesting. Yeah. You probably did that on purpose. Now, because and for the benefit of the audience, there's different learning strategies. And someone at Kim Sharp said, "Isn't teaching different than being a boss?" And it is. But they are related, and I say this because of what Marc brought up about somebody being kinesthetic. And it's interesting that he used kinesthetic, because kinesthetic learning and kinesthetic styles is my least favorite. It tends to be the way in which I don't communicate the most, because it's not the one that I use to learn. And teachers do that. Teachers teach the same way they learn. It's not fair. And they, of course, encourage teachers to use different methods like kinesthetic. Ask me how often I do a kinesthetic lesson. Right. You're supposed to. And for the benefit of the audience, kinesthetic, just like Marc mentioned earlier, is like a feely, touchy, physical type of learning. And it can transfer over into management styles and communication styles. So that's what we're talking about here. And like I said, I really think Marc said that on purpose, because he picked up that I'm probably not a big kinesthetic person, which I'm not. I loathe it when I was in teacher school and they made us do kinesthetic exercises. I wanted to choke my professor because I hated it. But you're right about that.
The audience, Melanie, the other side of that is as kinesthetic, and then there's visual and auditory learning.
Right.
And so my guess is you're much more of I'm going to assume, a visual?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Yes. And then you take in consideration personality styles. In our case, some people have heard of Myers-Briggs. There's DISC. One that I use is called the core map. And in essence, you can have 4 styles, and the boss might be somebody who's a real driver, and the person who is, working for them is not. They just basically have a different approach. Maybe they're what we call a relator, and they want to get as much information, but they don't want to disappoint you. So they're going to work really hard. It's just that they need those Swiss cheese holes filled in. And then they'll go do a great job. It might just take a little bit longer.
So it's possible, if someone's not doing a good job, that their boss is not awesome. Not that the employee's not awesome.
Yes. And Melody, you know why most people leave? I said that 70 to 75% disengagement figure and by the way, it's 13% engagement international. It's worse than the U.S. on an international basis. Think about what we're losing. And most of the reason these people leave their jobs, and you talk about millennials, they walk out after a year, maybe 2. Well, I'm going to come to that in a minute. But the point is, why anybody leaves their job is because of their immediate boss. In most cases, and surveys bear that out. Yep,
that sounds about right. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm trying to think of the jobs that I've left. Yep. It was because of you can pretty much deal with anything, but if the person you have to deal with, right over you is a royal pain. The most recent job I left was because my immediate boss changed, and she was a nightmare, and I was like, I'm out.
Really? So I'm just curious, what did that boss do that was offensive or inconsiderate, or what did they primarily do that turns you off?
I did not feel as though she communicated effectively like a grown-up. I was very offended that she left notes in my mailbox. And and the thing was, she came in the middle of the school year and changed like a whole lot of stuff in the middle of a school year. And she was a couple of things. She was a brand new principal. I've been in education probably longer than the chick's been alive. And and she came in like 2/3 of the way through the school year and changed all this stuff. And it's like, okay, rule 1, when you're new, don't change anything during the school year. That's just like operations 101, morale 101, management, even if you're not in a school. Like, you just don't change anything till you actually know what you're doing. So I'm just saying, Michelle Odom is here. Hey, Michelle. I'm just saying, And it really, I just found it really irritating. And I guess maybe she was trying to prove herself and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, before I was a teacher, I worked for a principal. I was an executive assistant for a principal in a private school for a very long time. So I had a different view than most teachers. So when principals mess up, I tend to know before other teachers do, because I've worked so closely on that side. So I was annoyed that she was a rookie and she was getting on my nerves. I was like, I am out. I don't have time for this, like, kindergarten, like, growth thing that she's going through. Like, I don't have time for this. She needs to treat me like an adult. And I'm out. And so I left.
Right.
That was that. Now, maybe she was a kinesthetic learner. That's why she left a note. Oh my God, she was a kinesthetic learner. That's why she left pieces of paper instead of talking to me.
Probably also, Melanie, she didn't like conflict. She was doing the best she could.
Well, it wasn't good enough.
I understand, totally. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if it goes against what you feel, think about that. You were on the receiving end, and just think about turning that around times hundreds, millions of people who are working for somebody that there's no concerted, dedicated, intentional approach to want to understand this other person. Instead, the simplest way is if you just do it my way, everything will be fine. Unfortunately, most of us, as we evolve and, get more mature and go through our life experiences, that's less and less acceptable. And that's why I had 7 jobs in 12 years. I couldn't even understand why these bosses would tell me, and I'm overgeneralizing, which is, it's my way, Mark, or the highway. Your choice. And I've got an idea here. I don't want to hear it. And I'm thinking, this isn't what I went to college for. This isn't what my style is like. I want to be contributory. I want to be a giver around ideas and make things successful. And none of it was welcome. And I thought, you know what? This isn't where I belong. And how many people, Melanie, I've talked to over 50,000 people in 38 countries, and I'll tell you, it has to be at least 80 to 85%. When I ask in a room, how many of you love your jobs, jump up in the morning and go, I can't wait to get to work, I'd be lucky if it's 10% that say yes.
That makes sense.
I swear to you, this is worldwide.
That makes sense. And, there is something to be said for meeting people in the middle. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. I have to say you're right, and I guess that's why you're the expert and why I have you on the show.
Well, I don't think I'm an expert. I'll tell you, it's just because it's been so hurtful to have gone through that personally, and then to interview these people again around the world. And there's so many people who are in pain. They got to get a paycheck, okay? But the really interesting thing, Melanie, is once that basic need is met, paychecks continue, bills are paid, house is covered, family's safe, hierarchy of needs starts kicking in. And you know what? I want to actually get some fulfillment out of this job. Oh, my boss is a dictatorial jerk, and when I show up at work, not only am I harassed, but I am demeaned and disrespected. Okay? I don't think I'm going to stick around here very long, but some do just because they need the money. But those who have any level of savvy, they're going to be looking around. And by the way, this is a lead-in, Melanie, to millennials. And as a boomer, I tolerated it for 12 years. Millennials, they'll probably tolerate it for about a minute and a half to maybe a year. I'm making that up. But point out of it is they don't want to play the game the way you and I did or do. They have been brought up in a different time. Their value set's different. And by the way, if I hear it once, I hear it a million times. Boomers are such spoiled little brats. And I like to at least put it out, and I watch eyes in the room roll when I say, you know what? They may strike you as that, but they are here to teach us a lesson.
Millennials, you mean, are such spoiled little brats?
Yes. Yeah, that's what boomers are saying.
Oh, right.
Millennials are such horrible, spoiled little brats. Really? Well, that may be what you think, But if you open yourself up and you literally start to learn to adapt your style, understand, ask questions, millennials are here to teach us. Because the way we've been doing business is not really, truly, in this day and time, it's not the most optimal way to do it. And if we think working, 80 hours a week is of value and benefit, I'll bet you we could find many people who have suffered burnout, deterioration, mental emotional stress. I mean, that is what the standard national approach is we're all under stress.
Okay.
And millennials aren't going to play that game, so they're trying to teach us. It just looks different. It feels uncomfortable, Melanie, and so many people want to rebel and basically put them into a category of being spoiled. Maybe to some degree, but weren't we all at that age?
No. I was awesome when I was that age. I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe we thought in an idealistic way, we all thought, this should have, that's what I thought. I was looking for Nirvana at 12 years. I couldn't find it, so I'm getting out and I'm going to go do my thing. Nobody wants to play the way I want to play. So anyhow, but millennials are here, I think, to teach us something. And if we would stop for a minute and stop categorizing them or stereotyping them, I think we might learn something.
So you're saying calling millennials snowflake crybabies? I should probably stop doing that.
Yep. And here's the really interesting thing is, you know what? They are human beings like you and I.
True.
They have some different values, but here's what's really interesting. We're all motivated by pretty much things.
True.
And if that's true, then we ought to start asking, what are we all motivated by? If you worked for me, the one thing that I would do, and this is where, you're talking about in your intro, influence, where I would really spend my time is on the up front. I would sit down with you, Melanie, I'd want to find out as much as I could about what drives you, what's interesting to you, what you're good at, where you feel like your strengths are, where you feel like maybe you're a little on the less strong side, but still, you can build those pieces up. I want to find out what drives you, because when I know that, I can use that, and I don't mean manipulatively, I mean to help keep you on a path of motivation, self-motivation, where I don't have to do that for you every day, week, or month. You're motivated because you have a goal and you're striving to get to that, and whether I'm around or not, you don't care.
Well, that's true, but see, I'm not a millennial, so all you have to do is give me directions and leave me and say, because I said so, and I'm good.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, how many millennials do you know that have started world-class companies? How many millennials? You can't categorize them all as lazy or spoiled, or they're living in their mom's basement and they're making $3 a month, and that's just all old stuff. But they can be motivated if you understand how to do that. And usually, it has nothing to do with being an authoritarian, dictatorial presenter of ideas or do it my way. Instead, it's asking great questions. That's one of the keys I teach every leader in the current situation.
Okay, what you're saying is making a lot of sense. I'm absorbing, and I'm sure my audience is absorbing too.
Okay.
Now, what do you think about? Because there is another aspect to this millennial kind of attitude. And listen, if you're a millennial, don't think I'm throwing you under the bus. I'm halfway kidding. I love my millennial peeps. I'm playing, and my millennial friends know I'm kidding around. But I just want to make that clear, just in case. But there is something to, in my opinion, just in my experience, that they tend to want to get to the top a little faster. They tend to want to. They tend to not, because I don't think they're lazy either. Particularly in politics, they hustle. They work really hard, but they don't. They tend to overlook a lot of details. At least it's been my experience, particularly working with them in politics, and not be concerned about the about how things look and about the polishing and things like that. Things that I think old school people like myself are concerned about. do you think that there's a way to approach millennials to help them understand that that's important, or do you think that we shouldn't be emphasizing that as important anymore?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and there's really, I think, two schools of thought around that. One, you mentioned the idea of getting to the top faster. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily getting to the top faster, but here's what they don't want to do, is they don't want to sit around and they don't want to spend 50 years getting a gold watch. I mean, that's old, outdated, it doesn't work, and it's frustrating as heck, and that was the approach that Grandpa took. So what it is now, especially with the swiftness and the change and the rapid aspect of how business functions, is, okay, listen, if you're raised on texting and email, and we want to move. There is no sitting behind the car in the right lane going slow anymore. They want to get out in the left lane, pull ahead, and start making things happen. That's really what's driving is they're one of the most civic-focused generations in the last 4 generations. They're focused on trying to make the world better. Okay, well, you can't do that sitting in the right lane with blinking your lights and honking your horn. You've got to be out there doing it. So that's where they're misunderstood, and boomers interpret that to mean, well, you want to run the company and you don't have any experience. No, I want to get out there and do things that are meaningful and that motivate and feel good and make me fulfilled, and yet we talk, okay, well, listen, slow down, pal. You got to go a lot slower. Why? That's my question to most leaders. Why do they have to go slower?
Because we said so. I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Exactly.
No. I totally get what you're saying, and I do think that this whole thing with labeling generations in general is the whole thing with labeling any group of people, quite frankly,
yes.
Is just a bad idea. It just is.
Right.
And, I kid about millennials, and I joke about that on the show often. We do that. I actually had I had a guest on the show not too long ago who was a generational translator, and she was a millennial. And man, oh man, did we have a ball. Because, she's telling us old folks, how they feel. And it was just... Yes. For us, it's just so against how we've been raised, how our generation was raised. So,
well, because I asked you earlier, I said, "Where did you learn that?" And you said, which is where most of us get it. We got it from our parents. We probably got it from educators, spiritual teachers, or religious teachers, or a couple of bosses. Those are the people that made the greatest level of impact on us, and yet we never challenge those old approaches or those learned approaches. We call it conditioning, and we don't challenge those, and so we just keep going on. Anybody that doesn't fit that, we dismiss them or we label them because they're different. And we don't stop long enough to look at our own stuff. And in fact, we might just be operating, in the right lane with our horn honking and our lights blinking, and they just want to get around us.
So the boss that I had for 5 years when I was in corporate marketing, who had me in the bathroom crying like once a month, that was probably because... That was probably where I got that from, because I was like maybe 20 years old. That's probably where that came from. So your book talks about some myths that there are regarding leadership and like what is good leadership. What are some of those myths?
Well, here's a good one. Here's a good one that I think is a good one. And that is, leaders are born, not developed. And that is so old, outdated, and not true. Some people might be born with a certain personality that lends itself to being more people-centric, therefore translating into maybe a better leader, sooner, faster, easier. But the point is, leadership, effective leadership, really is to be learned, experienced, and developed as a skill. It's not something that we are naturally born with. As a matter of fact, there's in the book, there's something called passive aggressive and passive aggressive, and then there's something called assertive. Well, most people are either born to passive or aggressive, which aren't really good leadership styles.
No.
And the really good ones learn to ascend, develop, and become better at being more assertive in a people-centric way. And that's about 12% of the population. The other 88% don't always take the time, energy, or focus to make that ascension. Therefore, they stay stuck in some really old, unuseful leadership characteristics.
I tend to agree with you on that, and I can relate. I can relate to that, and it's funny that you say that about being either passive or aggressive. But I do that's one area where I think that being a Christian kind of helps, because it prevents you from doing things that are passive aggressive. Because that passive aggressive tendencies are really kind of anti-Christian tendencies at the same time. So it like stops me from doing stupid things.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're just being like passive aggressive and low key spiteful. That's not cool. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen.
And
go ahead.
The other beauty is that at some point when people start to know these things, Melanie, and it's so funny. You know how, like, when you go out and buy a new car, let's say a blue Volkswagen, then the next thing you're riding in your blue Volkswagen, and you now see every other blue Volkswagen on the road, right?
Yes.
Before you didn't even notice one of them. And it's sort of like now that when you get your consciousness raised, you start to see the errors of some of the old beliefs and old strategies. And it's, wow, why do people still do that? Well, it's because we've been conditioned to it, and we don't know differently. But, you know, once we start to experience that, it's like, golly, I see every blue VW out there. I see every hole in this management strategy or style that's possible, and it's not very becoming, to be quite frank.
You're right. You're right again,
Yeah.
Mark. Right again. All right. So we're coming to the close of the hour. Tell my listeners where to get, somebody's knocking on the door. Give me 1 second. Tell the listeners where to get your book and how they can contact you if they want you to speak.
You bet. Well, the best way to do all of that is to go to our website at www.spectracom.com, and that's SPECTRACOMM.com. That's Spectracoms with double M's.com. And if you want the free Power Shift book, just do spectracom.com/book. And you can get that. We'll ship that to you without hesitation. So, Melanie, yeah, absolutely. It's been a joy to talk to you today. You are such a fun interviewer and host. It's been delightful.
Thank you so much. The feeling is quite mutual. We are going to go into a commercial break, and the next hour of Money Talk with Melanie is coming up with my guest, Ms. Trudy Beerman. She is the profitable Christian strategist. Very excited to have her on the show. Thank you so much, Marc Schwartz, for being with us. I appreciate it. We'll be back after these messages.
It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com. And maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcast. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. Only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Miller. Join me through shrmedia.com, HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network, at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on BlogTalkRadio.com. There's no surrender ever, because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey guys, it's Sackhead Clint. I'm excited to tell you about a brand new show here on the SHR Media Network. I'm teaming up with the one and only, all-powerful, the bloviating Zeppelin sitting here to my left, bringing to you a fresh new show here on the network. It's Against Tyranny. And we'll be picking up where the Sackheads left off. Excited to be with you, sir.
Sackheads against tyranny.
We're going to chat. We're going to chat Wednesday night. Sackheads Against Tyranny.
Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Oh, it's the same time, right? 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific.
Same Sack time, same Sack channel.
SHRmedia.com.
See what I did there?
It's your business demon here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chenham Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
and all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events? All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Hey, BZ. So, the plan's working. We got rid of Socko. Sean is now stepping away. And I know, insidious. You know, we talked about this for, for the last 3 years. And finally coming to fruition.
You know it's all in the room, right?
It's almost like he's here still. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's kind of...
It's amazing. It's kind of eerie. Like a poltergeisty thing.
Sackheads Against Tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are here for the second hour of Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I'm coming to you live from the DMV, actually, today, via SHR Media. The DMV is a slang here in this area, and I want to sound as cool as possible, for D.C., Virginia, and the DMV. Yeah, you're right. D.C., Virginia, Maryland area. As I'm at a conference in D.C. This week. And so I'm very excited. I hope you guys enjoyed the first hour. Those of you who hung in there for the first hour with Marc Schwartz. He has a book called Power Shift, and he really talked to us about being different managers, trying to be better managers, and not just totally just judging millennials and using millennial strengths, really, and being a little more open and a little less judgy when it comes to our millennial friends. Because, as he says in his book, they're going to be mostly millennials in the not too distant future, and they're not going anywhere. They're going to be our workers, so we better learn how to deal with them. We better learn how to manage them in a way that's going to be productive for our businesses, which, is a fair point. Came up with a lot of good points. I guess that's why he wrote the book, because he has all the good points. He was actually very, very good. If you missed that, please do go back and listen to the podcast when it gets downloaded, which will be very shortly. Well, no, actually it won't be because I'm out of town, but it'll be by tomorrow because I have to run as soon as I get off the air and go do more stuff as soon as I get off the air. But a little more housekeeping before I introduce my guest, Trudy Beerman. So excited to have her on the show. She's got so much energy, and she's got a new book out, which is also super exciting. If you're not following me on Twitter, what is the problem? I don't understand why you're not doing that. And my Twitter handle is at Money Talk Mel. That's the business Twitter handle. My personal Twitter handle is at NJGOP Diva. So if you're really jonesing for my political musings or, just like my random thoughts, you can follow me at NJGOP Diva, or for financial news and updates and advice and things like that. You can, and of course, updates about the show. You can follow me on at Money Talk Mel. Also, my Facebook page. I mentioned this in the first hour, and a couple of people said, "What? This isn't your show page?" And I'm like, no, this is not my show page, but this is where most of the people are. So I tend to stream live from my personal page and then post it onto my business page, which is just a lot less people there. Why is that? Because you're not following. You have not liked my Facebook page yet, which is Money Talk with Melanie. See that? See there? And also, I should tell you that I'm also an independent financial professional. I sit down and talk to people, and just like I answer questions on the show, occasionally people will inbox me and ask me questions. And, ask me questions about their retirement funds and ask for advice and this, that, and the other. Now I do consultations and things like that. The first thing that I do before I attempt, a lot of times financial professionals, just start selling stuff. That is not what I do. What I do is assess what your situation is, see if there's any questions that I can answer about your situation, and if there's any way that I can help you, then I help you. But when I first do an assessment, it really is just a chat to see where you are. And it takes about 20 minutes. So if you're interested in something like that, give me a yell. Inbox me on Facey or LinkedIn or any of the 20 billion social media places that I am. Pinterest, Google+. Where else? Oh, you can email me at moneytalkwithmelanie at gmail.com. Moneytalkwithmelanie at gmail.com. You can email me there if you like. You can certainly do that as well. Okay. I'm tired of talking about myself, so I'm just kidding. That's not why. I want to bring Trudy Beerman on because I'm so excited to talk to her. I only get to talk to her on Facebook occasionally, but now she's got a new book out. Super excited about that. Her book is called Cash Your Size: How to Be Debt-Free, Outrageously Profitable, and Joyfully Generous. If you're not familiar with Trudy Beerman's work, she's an author and she's the Profitable Christian's Strategist. That is what she does. Because there are crazy people out there that think that if you're a Christian, that means that you can't make money. And that is not the way it works. And Trudy's going to tell you about how that is not the way that works. So I'm excited to have her back on the show. This is actually her second visit to Money Talk with Melanie. And without further ado, the one and only Ms. Trudy Beerman. How are you, darling?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. How you doing?
Awesome. I am fantastic. Always awesome in Trudy land.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's fantastic. I'm glad things are well in Trudy land. So I didn't go over your bio because you have new stuff going on and you have a new book coming out. So I figured I'd let you tell the audience what you want them to know about your bio, your background, that kind of thing.
Well, I like to tell people that I'm the speaker who finds a money trail in any topic. Because, Melanie, any topic will have a money trail. You're talking daycare, we can talk money. You're talking healthcare, we can talk money. You're talking church, and we can talk money. There is no topic that we can't find a money trail in. So that's the nutshell right there. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about my new book.
Yeah, me too. When I saw you had a new book out and I saw what the title was, I was like, yes, because you are the money woman for real. I mean, I and it's not your first book. This is not your first rodeo.
This is actually, I think, my sixth published book.
Wow, yeah, she's got. And this, the thing that I really love about this is that it does have. It's in a Christian context, which is really needed. You have a book called the Bible on Business. The Creditors Are Coming, From Pain to Purpose, and other books. And so you said this is your sixth book, and this one's called Cashercise. So how to be debt free, outrageously profitable, and joyfully generous. So how does this book differ from your other books?
It's very, very different, Melanie. First of all, the word cashercise is a trademark word. It's not a real English word. It's a blend of cash and exercise. So it's a trademarked word, and I hope it conveys working out your money. So that's the first thing. And whereas like the Bible on Business kind of was a more of a devotional, exposing and, just going over a lot of things that are in the Bible that are literally principles for running your business. Cashercise is a far more implementable how-to strategy book. So I give away one advanced credit uptake strategy in the book, but I really address the Christian mindset and our current situation in very conversational, punch you to your gut kind of language, and just get real and give you some strategies to actually work on your stuff. Excellent.
I love it. And if you go to Trudy's LinkedIn page, which I highly recommend, she talks about biblical stewardship, which is another, I think, a word that you use kind of interchangeably with Christian strategy and that kind of thing. And I think that's important, and which is one of the reasons why I love having people like you on the show. At least I feel like that kind. And when you say thinking from a Christian background and Christian stewardship, what exactly do you mean by that in the business context?
Okay, so first of all, Melanie, a part of what you said up front cut out. But
I'm sorry.
Stewardship is a word that not a lot of people use. It's not a common word, and I find it's very limited even within the Christian community. So I'm more using the word management these days. We're managers of what God has put under our control. So go back and ask me that question again.
Oh, I was asking you when you refer to, I think I said stewardship or management. When you refer to that, what does that mean in the Christian context, and how are they related? The reason why I asked that question is because there are some people that think that Christian business, politics, like that, none of them are related. And so I guess right. And so I guess what I'm trying to, how do you feel as though they're related? I think they're related. How do you feel as though they're related?
First of all, I am me. And where I am, there I am. I can't, leave my arm at home and function. So therefore, anywhere I go, Melanie, I am there. And I'm there as the full package of what Trudy is. And that includes my belief, my faith. I'm not a closet Christian, and I'm not a Christian on Sunday morning. Trudy is a Christian, and it goes with me. I'm unapologetic about it. It influences every thought, every action, so it is who I am. And so it's impossible for me to be a businesswoman and it not influence my thinking, my behavior, the way I treat people, that kind of a thing. It just doesn't exist. This separation of church and state can happen intellectually, but not emotionally, and certainly I can't leave the integral core of who I am and still show up anywhere. So I just don't really see a real way for me to separate the two realistically.
I tend to agree with that mindset, and of course, with me, I think I think you were on the live feed when I was mentioning that I was one of the reasons why I was in this area was that I was attending a conference for the Republican women.
Yes.
And people somehow think I get asked, especially as a brown person, quite often, how can you be a Republican? And to me, and this is, of course, just my opinion, if you're a Christian, I don't know how you can not be either, at least vote Republican. You may be part of other parties.
I don't necessarily agree. And I did vote for Trump, by the way, but I think they're separate. And
right.
And the reason for that is Republican does not stand for Christianity. Nor does Democratic stand for Christianity. It is its own dogma. And while there may be Christians who are Republican and Christians who are Democrat, I believe they're both there.
I do too.
Because I just feel like just the same way that we can have Presbyterian and Methodist and and Anglican, we all have a different way of receiving information. My favorite way to explain this, and this could be coming from my paralegal background, because we spent a lot of time in class, and it came out through as well in my background of being in the press, writing for the press. We have to be very clear about a style of writing, and so if a glass has 50% content, that is the empirical fact. But somebody can take that empirical fact and make an explanation and say it's half full. And someone can look at that same piece of fact and say it's half empty. And we're both talking about the very same piece of information. And so I honestly, Melanie, feel like there can be Christians on both sides of the fence looking at the very same content and walking away with a different perspective of that content. And so I don't really feel like you can't be Christian if you're Democrat, or you can't be Christian if you're Republican. I don't really buy that.
Oh, no.
That conversation at all.
Oh, and I want to be clear that if that's what I said, that's not what I meant.
No, that's not what you said.
Oh, okay.
But okay. That way. No, you didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
No. You didn't say that. But a lot of people could interpret it that way.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I just wanted to be very clear about where I stood on that potential implication.
Oh, gotcha. No, because if that's what I implied, that's certainly not what I meant. I can't stand when people question people's Christianity, particularly based on their political beliefs. That's not what I do. What I was saying is my personal belief is that the reason why I vote Republican is because I'm a Christian, and to me, that's my thought process. And I don't see how other people's thought process doesn't work that way, but I am not questioning whether or not, their faith or anything like that. I'm talking about thought process and selecting your political party. That is all I'm speaking to. I'm not questioning anyone's faith, and I want to be clear about that. And thank you for doing that, because if that was the implication, that's not one I wanted to make. For sure. For a certainty. But that being said, with my point was that your political affiliation, your business affiliations, all of those things are connected. Like you said, you're one person. Like, it has to follow you. And what was coming to mind was there are people who, like you were saying, you voted for Trump, I voted for Trump, and people were saying, well, how could you vote for Trump? And I would say, well, because I believe X, Y, Z, and these are the policies that he supports that go with X, Y, Z. And it doesn't separate, my decisions don't separate just because, I don't like his tweets. Like, that doesn't mean I can vote for Hillary.
Well, honestly, if we're going to talk politics, first of all, Obama was not an option. So that was end right there. And then as far as I'm concerned, even if Hillary was an option, she kind of killed it when she sabotaged Bernie's process. And I thought if she if she couldn't win her primary honestly, then she couldn't run an honest campaign at all, and she put herself out. And it had nothing really to do with, what party I was with or not. Trump was a wild card, and I just decided to go with the wild card and see what somebody who was not, quid pro quo, already, one of the boys kind of a thing would do. So I'm kind of watching him as well, just to see, what he's going to do so far. I feel he has kept most of his promises, and, which is, I'll give him he's a wild card. We'll just see what he plays.
He does.
I'm looking at him.
Let me ask you, as a money person, how do you feel about what he's doing for the economy? Like, do you think that the moves that he's making, the policies that he's putting in place, do you think that that's more beneficial for the principles that you have laid out in your book, Cash or Size? Like, are those principles helping people work their money, exercise their money a little better? And if so, how so? Like, how does Cash or Size, help in this kind of economy?
Well, one of the things he did was he reduced the number of people on food stamps. And I found that to be interesting because in the work that I do come across people who, if freedom is a very precious commodity, and when they made food stamps and other government benefits so widely available, it allowed people to enjoy a high sense of personal freedom without personal work. And, it's not too hard to scale your lifestyle back, especially if you can, have a boyfriend that's, under the radar and so forth. It's not really hard to scale your lifestyle back because personal freedom is sometimes worth more than the paycheck. And so by making certain social services so easy to get and not keeping them for the people who truly need them and as a stopgap to get out of your situation, I think it became, a rite of passage, and I can't say it's across the board, but there are people who, women who are having babies so they could get a bigger tax write-off. I mean, and I'm not going to say that's across the board, but it was just too easy, in my opinion, to get social services and get them so easily, get them so willingly, get them so freely, get a big ticket item. I mean, it's just, so that was one thing, but he scaled it back because job opportunities went up. So there were fewer people who were now unemployed, and because fewer people were unemployed, it led to fewer people qualifying for the food stamp and whatever other benefits they were getting. And, I can understand that, if you had, Monday through Friday to make your decisions as to where you wanted to be and when and all that, and just enough money to get you there versus now you actually have to go work for your money, I can understand a few people be a little bit upset. So, the Bible has a lot to say about laziness, and I would never say everybody on, government assistance is lazy, but that's the point. Government assistance should be for those who need it, for the disabled, for the children who are, without their parents, it should be for those in need. And if the social services were for those in need and not just for the easy, access as it used to be, then even our taxation should ultimately see a benefit, which did happen in this tax season. A lot of people had tax breaks they didn't have before. And so, on the surface, and I say on the surface because we will truly never know all the things that, that people have to agree to get other things. So for right now, it appears as if, there are some wise strategies. Wall Street, who fought against him before the election, had a huge surge. And, a lot of money people are continuing to make money and not necessarily at the expense of poor people. So, I think so far I'm watching the economy, and we still have a lot coming against us. I mean, hurricanes and all that, these are natural disasters that will take a toll on people's personal finances, on cities and governments and so forth. So, it's not a perfect scenario by any means, but I think under the circumstances, I think he's doing doing okay.
Indeed. And, it's something that you mentioning the hurricanes just reminded me of something. We had a speaker at the luncheon today. Her name is Dee Dee Bass. And she mentioned, she did PR for Dr. Ben Carson. But she mentioned today that the Trump administration forgave debt for all the HBCUs that were in debt that had suffered from hurricanes. And I don't know which schools they were, and I want to say she said 5 HBCUs, it may have been more, that one of the things that the Trump administration did was forgave all their debt that they owed to the government. And, it wasn't even in the news anywhere. And for the sake of the audience, I know sometimes we use these acronyms and people don't always know what they are. An HBCU is an historically black college or university. But that he forgave those debts to, hurricane colleges that are in hurricane ravaged areas, HBCUs that were in hurricane ravaged areas. I didn't know about that. And, I consider myself to be someone who's fairly on top of this kind of stuff. And I hadn't even heard about that. So it's really amazing, the things that he's doing, in my opinion.
That definitely sounds good to me, too.
Yeah, right? I hadn't heard that either. So your book, Cash Your Size, talks about debt. The first step, right, to any healthy financial life is to not be in debt, is to be debt free. And your book says that how you got into debt matters. What do you mean by that, and why does it matter?
Well, the premise that you made before about being debt free, I think is just one of the legs of what I call a financial table, and not the main leg. But how you got into debt does matter because, and that's probably the investigator in me. Like I said, being a paralegal, coming from that background, and even for writing for the press, you get very investigative. And if somebody doesn't know how they ended up in a situation, it's very easy for them to continue to do that thing or to do it again in the future. So maybe someone's in debt because they co-signed a bad loan. Maybe someone is in debt through divorce or whatever. So once you identify the main driving cause of the debt, it's because let's say a woman finds herself in debt because of a recent divorce. But prior to the divorce, her credit was good. It's a good chance that once she gets over the hurdle of the damage of the divorce, she might get right back on track because she had good habits to begin with. So but if somebody was in debt because of poor lifestyle choices, just a spender and so forth, you have to identify what put the person in debt to begin a matter of correction. It's like any doctor, before they can give a prescription, they have to first, as best as possible, accurately diagnose the problem. So that's kind of like what that is.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people, don't really look at that, and then they end up in sometimes they end up in the same spot because they made the same exact mistakes. Like they got a clean slate and then they did it all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is definitely, that was definitely not a good look, not a good situation, not a way to handle things. So once you have kind of ascertained, if you will, how it is that you got into that situation, what is the next step? Or is there a way, like there's no easy way, at least in my opinion, to be completely debt free, and especially to stay that way is so hard.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily very wise, and I say that tongue in cheek. We actually need to have a debt history for people to determine if we are debt worthy. And here's the crazy thing about that. The Bible does says in Romans 13:8, owe no man any debt but love. But let me just say, in this economy, in any first world economy, even in third world economy, I'm from Jamaica, they're very much right on track with all of this. If I don't know someone, I don't know you personally, Melanie. We're friends on Facebook. We chat all the time. I've never personally met you. So if I were going to do business with you, I'd either have to trust my gut or I could look at a document that is objective, that carries a history, that has done some risk assessment, and that's what companies do. So if someone wants to purchase a home, if someone wants to purchase a car, and forget purchases, sometimes it is jobs, a background for a job, and certain high-level security clearance jobs, maybe even your insurance rate. They look at your credit score because it's an objective look at your history of whether or not you keep your agreements. So nobody has to go with their gut. Nobody has to make a judgment call. They go with this score. And so even if you have all the money in the world to buy everything cash, you almost do have to keep some kind of debt history, even if you have impeccable payment responses to that debt, but just to show on document that you are trustworthy, so to speak. So in this economy, in this digital age, to think you can get away with living on just a cash-based system is to really shortcut your future. Unless you plan to get off the grid completely, even if you have all the cash to pay all your bills, I still say use the card and then pay it off, because there needs to be a documented track of your financial behavior, and that's what the credit score basically is, an overall summary of data to determine your trustworthiness.
It's very true. And you know that now this completely conflicts, and I'm sure you've heard this before, right? With the one and only Dave Ramsey's advice, who says you should never take out any credit cards ever. And I've always thought that was like a little extremist view of money. But there are, some advisors that say what you say, and then some that are in the Dave Ramsey camp that, the theory is if you buy everything cash, you don't need credit, therefore you don't need a credit score. And I think like you think, but like, what if one day you do need a credit score? You know what I mean? Because to me, I don't know, someone without a credit score to me like has something to hide. Like, why are you off the grid?
Well, I wouldn't assume they have something to hide, but like I said, if I don't know you and I need to decide if I can trust you,
right,
a credit score is one objective way to look at it. And again, it may not even be anything about purchasing. It may be that you want that top security job. And, even if you're a millionaire and you can pay for everything cash, the fact is that there are millionaires that still have poor financial habits. Right now I have a clip of Kanye West who makes millions of dollars, but he owes many millions more. So again, a credit background, a credit data, is even if you have all the cash in the world, it is an objective way for people to make a decision if they want to work with you. If they want to, like I said, even to get insurance. Your insurance rates are determined by that. So if you have no credit score, insurance companies have a hard time deciding. And guess what they're going to do, Melanie? They're going to err on the side of caution, which means you're going to get the higher rate just because they don't know if you're unriskworthy. So and also I have 2 videos out there challenging the great Dave Ramsey. I respect him. I have utmost respect for his work. I just don't always agree with him. And there is a balance. You certainly don't want to have 6, 7, 8 credit cards. There is a healthy balance. There is a point where you can have too much. But having none is really not a good idea in this digital age. Can you function without credit? Absolutely. There are people who get off the grid all the time. But that doesn't mean, but if they're going to potentially limit their interaction with others simply because, like I said, if I don't know you and you have this great business deal and you're saying like, well, let's go do business together, I'm not going to make a judgment call that deals with millions of dollars based on a gut. I'm going to want to at least do some background on you, and if you don't have the background data, it's going to be a hard call. So people really do need to have a digital footprint when it comes to their finances. It's as simple as that.
That's very true. I tend to agree with it. And I don't know if you find this to be the case, but I find this to be the case with dealing with some clients, that people who make, the more money people make, you would think it would be the other way around. But I find that the more money people make, the less in control of their finances they tend to be, because they're busy making money. Like you gave the example of Kanye West, making millions of dollars, but also owing millions of dollars. A lot of people who are millionaires, especially, or like lots of thousandaires, 6-figure heirs, are so busy making money that they don't pay attention to the management aspects of the money. And that's how they, can get out of control sometimes.
Well, I don't know if that's across the board. I like to look at statistics, and the reason why people are in the top 5% is because they have a positive net worth. You don't get a positive net worth by not paying attention to your balance sheet, to your your net worth.
Right.
Your net worth means you have a positive. You may owe, but you're worth more than you owe. There are people who I like to say that they flash a bling, but they're broke on the back, and there are lots of those. You're right, but statistically, right now, the number of billionaires in this country, the number of millionaires in this country, I mean, I like to track those numbers from time to time. It is suggesting that there is actually a growing population of very wealthy people, and it's since the recession, amazingly. I think the recession gave people a brand new respect for money, but you're right that the people who don't have the extra cash tend sometimes to be a little bit more careful about how they make their spending choices. And I have often found that if somebody makes an extra $50 pay raise, they suddenly have a new $50 bill that they have to pay with that money, so they're not really extending their liquidity of cash. They're just racking up more expenses. So, but statistically, there are an increasing number of people who have been paying greater attention to their net worth, especially since the recession. I think a lot of people don't want to get caught with their pants down again.
Yes.
Like they did back then.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot. You mean the 2008 recession? Now I must be getting old, because now I have to keep track of recessions. Now, because there's been, a couple.
There's been a couple. And there's another one expected, of course, just like the coming of Christ. We just don't know when.
We're well overdue.
Are indicating that there'll be another. Unfortunately, it might come during Trump's tenure, and then they'll blame him when these signs started long before he took over. So I don't know if he'll be able to correct it and keep everything on track as it is right now, or if the predictions will come true, and it is what it is. Because I mean, right now, they're already gone back to a lot of the recessionary behaviors. The mortgage companies are talking about the lowest rates now, lock it in now. The home equity ads are starting again. They're on the TV and radio, the home equity ads, like crazy. It's just the flipping of real estate, just like it was back then. A lot of the things that were happening, if you look at the market charts, I mean, a lot of the pundits and a lot of the experts are saying, there's another one coming, and, their cycles, their economic cycles.
Right.
And, it's been, maybe almost 8-9 years now since the last major one. So just like a hurricane in Florida, it's been a while since we've had a major wreck in Florida from a hurricane. It's like we're almost due another one. It's just, that's how it works sometimes.
True, and cyclically, we're a couple of years overdue for an economic downturn. But and here's like you were saying earlier that President Trump is a wild card. He's doing things so completely differently with the economy. It's hard to say what is a normal cycle anymore from an economic perspective.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Although the old boys network keep trying to force him to do things same old, but you're right. he does keep trying to break that mold and do things differently. So it is that wild card. We really don't know how things will work out, but he's trying to do things that they're like, they've never done it that way before. They have no clue how it's going to pan out. And everybody is, you know, in a wait-and-see mode, right, really.
It's a nail-biter. And, I mean, politically it's a nail-biter. Economically it's a nail-biter because you just don't, I mean, he blew politics up completely. So, like, the midterms, like, who knows? I mean, we should, from a political perspective, just cyclically and historically, Republicans should lose a lot of seats. We should definitely lose the Senate, but maybe we won't because Donald Trump's our president, and he shouldn't be historically.
The thing is, though, I mean, he also at one time was a supposed Democrat. He's not really told any political line in his history.
Nope.
He has just always done Trump.
Yep.
Trump has always just done Trump. He's not. You know, there was a time where he was branded Democrat, and he has switched gate based on, you know, he's not a party line guy. He's just kind of like who's doing what he thinks should be done. And for a man of his means, he's a businessman primarily. He's not a politician. He's looking at the bottom line. He's looking at the balance sheet. He's not looking at, you know, votes and whose pocket he needs to line for votes. He's looking at the country like he would a business.
That's very true, and I think there are tons of benefits to that. You know, as somebody who's you know who worked in schools and worked in both private and public schools, and you know, private schools are run like businesses. Public schools, from a fiscal perspective, and public schools tend to be run like, unfortunately, public entities. And from a fiscal perspective, that's not a good thing. But, you know, so I was looking forward to kind of him applying his business savvy to the, you know, to a bureaucratic, you know, to the bureaucracy that is the government. But it's, you know, it's a hard call. Now, your book, Cash Your Size, says that you can have a 720 credit score. People can have a 720 credit score, is that because I mean, people think that's like an unattainable thing, a 720 credit score. How is that possible?
It is possible, and actually in the book I share one strategy that will uptick your credit score, even though it's not a debt reduction strategy. It is not a strategy for paying down the debt, yet the strategy I share will help uptick your credit score from doing what you're already doing, which is paying your bills. It's just the strategy of paying the bills as outlined in the book that will impact the 35% portion of how your credit score is created, and for a day or two may impact the 30% score, which is the debt history, the debt, you know, the debt to income, the the amount you owe to how much you have on the card kind of ratio. So 65% of your credit score is 100% your behavior. The other parts of it is inquiries and that kind of a thing. So our behavior is no question about it. We can change our behavior and change our score. It's as simple as that. Change your behavior, change your score.
I like that. And it's very hard to change your behavior. I mean, it's, you know, budgeting.
That is the hard part. Changing the score is not the hard part. The score is going to actually change on a daily basis. People don't realize that. A lot of people never check their score. Maybe they haven't checked it in years, or maybe they checked it a couple months ago. But I promise you, if you can check your score almost daily, and it will be changing almost daily. And the score change is not the problem. It's the behavior change that's the hard part. That's correct.
It is extreme. It's extremely difficult to, especially one that benefits you. I mean, as one who does consulting in this area, and you tell people what the best thing to do is, and even when they can afford to do it, and you can show them, I do analysis, and I show them the analysis, and I show them the hard numbers based on, you know, their situation, and they still don't want to do what they need to do because it's uncomfortable. And I get it. I totally get it. But if you want to stay financially healthy, if you want to stay physically healthy, you have to do what's uncomfortable. And it's the same thing with your finances. It works the same exact way. You have to stay physically healthy. What do you got to do? You got to work out. You can't eat. I'll confess to my guilty pleasure. I can't eat Oreo cookie McFlurries every day. It would be very comfortable for me. I think it would make me very, very happy to eat Oreo cookie McFlurry every single day. Like, extremely happy. But I can't. It's not good for my health.
Right.
I gotta run. I gotta exercise. Like, you gotta do stuff that's uncomfortable. Your financial health is the same way. You gotta do what's uncomfortable if you're gonna maintain your health, unfortunately. God, adulting's so hard. It just is. It's just stinky. I hate it. So the book talks about other thing that I really like about the book is that it talks about some really common things that other financial books don't talk about. You talk about money management for Christians. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of people don't think that applies. And I buried the lead a little bit because the beginning of your book talks about how, and I love this, the opening of your book talks about how the Bible is applicable today, just like it was in Bible times. And that is another just, false belief that, in my opinion, that the Bible is just this old book that has no application for today. Why did you decide that was an important way to open your book and that was an important part to add to your book?
Well, because it is for me. And the story that I open with, although it was an Old Testament story, I've often said it could be a story that's on our newspaper pages today. And without quoting the biblical reference, I mean, if I just share the story, people understand it is a story that is very relevant and happening today. So a man ran his family's finances on debt. He died. There was no insurance. There's no money left behind. His wife suddenly becomes a single mom, a widow with kids. She has no financial resources. She doesn't know what to do. She goes for help. She gets some strategies given to her, one of which includes selling. A lot of people, you tell them, one of the ways out of their financial situation is to sell something, and they'll box at you. They want the J-O-B. I like to call them the golden handcuffs. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you tell people to go sell something, they go crazy. Well, her solution was to go sell. And when she sold, it was through selling something that she was going to make more than enough money to pay back the debt her husband had created and have money she now would have to manage for herself and her boys. Lots of women are in this situation where, their husbands are, leaving them in divorce, walking out the door, dropping dead, getting sick, whatever the case may be. And there are too many women who are in a financial situation because their performer setup has crashed. And I felt like this story is as relevant today as it was in the pages of the Old Testament. And without even telling anybody where that story is from, the fact is that story is as relevant today as it was when it was written before even Jesus came on earth. So the Bible is relevant. It is very much relevant. It has lessons for us today, right now.
It certainly does. And the book is worth getting just for that story. Now, anybody who's read their Bible, maybe you probably have to read it a couple times to remember this story. But it's a little bit of a long story, but an important one, and it happens exactly as Trudy just put it. And you're exactly right. It completely applies today. Which it kind of reminds me, and I'm actually glad that I revisited that story today, because it kind of you have this thing where you were talking about women getting left alone and this, that, and the other, and there's kind of this thing among Christians where women are too independent because they make their own money and et cetera, et cetera, and that story really completely contradicts that theory. That women shouldn't be, trying to be self-sufficient in some way. So I kind of...
Well, this woman had to become self-sufficient. That was the solution. This woman had to become self-sufficient. And that's the situation for many women. They do absolutely have to be self-sufficient. The Proverbs 31 woman is an entrepreneur of the finest kind. So, you know, that's a conversation for another day. But I do want to say, Melanie, today is the last day for the promotion of someone being able to buy, in quotations, my book for $0. I had a 4-day promotion running. It ends tonight. And all the downloads are counting towards my bestseller status, which, by the way, I'm 6 categories. I'm number 1 in 6, bestseller in 6 Amazon categories.
5 stars.
Which is a huge praise report for me.
Yep. And it's 5 stars, 5-star customer reviews, which is fantastic.
And I got bestseller status when it was in pre-order stage, when people were paying for it. And it will go back to a price point after tonight. And I may do one other 99-cent promotion just to try and hit one other target. But for the most part, when that's done, and there is a print book that goes along with that. There's a print book option, which will be released soon. But it will be the same book, but it will be in print form. So
excellent. I love it. So let me ask you about these holes in your wallet. I find that I have holes in the wallet too, and I haven't had a chance to read that particular chapter, but I'd love to know if other people experience this, where there's money that seems to be missing. And I of course don't want you to reveal what you wrote in it about the book, but in the book, because you need to buy the book so you can find out what you wrote about it.
Well, there are lots of ways that we can have holes in our wallet. Sometimes someone puts it there. Like I can tell you, my parents, for example, my mom just quietly spends my dad's money. And he goes to the account and he's like, "Where is this money? You spent it." And she's totally entitled to spending it. But she's not on the same page with my dad with regards to, "Hey, I've got bills to pay and you're busy spending this money." So sometimes that's the reason. But a lot of times it's the money that we don't feel. We will remember that $100 purchase, but we may not remember the $2 one, the $5 one, the $10 one. And you get enough of those, and they do add up. So,
yes, they do. And I will,
holes in our wallet.
I recommend from time to time, and I actually haven't done it in a while, that people use some tracking apps to track their spending. Yep. It is eye-opening. Mint.com is one of my favorite ones. The problem with the app, though, is if you're a cash person, you will never have that track happen. Now, there's other people who, if you're a cash person, there is another method. People call it the envelope method that will help you kind of avoid the holes in your...
Yes, but envelope is also online. You can do envelope online. I want to say never. I probably shouldn't have said never, but the apps, you mentioned apps. Apps are going to track your money, but that's when you're using a debit or credit card. So that, because you said apps, that's why I said so. If they want to do cash, it's not an app.
Right.
By that point, they are pretty much using paper and pen.
Yep, it's very true. So you can use the paper and pen, you can use the envelope method, and if you don't know what I'm referring to, the envelope method, the long and short of it is, you take, if you're a cash person and you want to stay on budget, you take a bunch of envelopes, you write the different categories, and you put the cash that you have your whole paycheck or whatever it is, in cash, and you put whatever you've budgeted for that specific time frame in those envelopes. You write the name of the category outside. Say it's your clothing budget is $75 a month. You take an envelope, you put clothing outside, you put $75 in that envelope, and if you're supposed to have that envelope for a month or however long your budgeting cycle is, I'm like a little budget marine with mine. I try to do like a weekly budget so that I can stay on track. But at the end of that period of time, you don't spend more than what's in that envelope. And you do the same thing for grocery shopping. You do the same thing for everything.
But there is an app. There's an app called Envelope, which is a letter M, envelope. And it is a Christian-based program where you do pretty much the same thing, but it's all online. So you still can use an envelope system online. You portion out your money digitally, and you spend it according to that budget digitally. So, yeah. It's still there.
It's tricky. Now, if you're a person who uses a debit card and credit cards and things like that, because some people are consider themselves cash only, but they just use a debit card. I mean, I'm pretty much like that, but I use my debit card forever. The reason I use my debit card for nearly everything is because I want to make sure that I'm keeping track, which I feel silly. My rule used to be not using it for anything like under $10, but now I figured out how to do it without getting, the charges and stuff for it, and I want it tracked. But if you do that even if you do it for 1 month to just see where the holes are, you'd be shocked how much money you spend on stuff. A couple of years ago, I discovered I was spending something like $75 a month on coffee. I was like, what? Yeah, we'll be making coffee at home from now on. Like, that's crazy. I was like, that's an insane amount of money. That's for coffee. That's crazy. So I started making it myself and taking it to work with me. Because I was like, that's, to me, like that, I could be putting that money to more use than wasting it stopping by a convenience store and buying coffee every morning. That's insanity. And you'll find all kinds of holes in your wallet that way. All kinds of stuff that you spend money on that you had no idea how much it adds up. Like Trudy was saying earlier, those $1 and $2 purchases, those impulse buys, add up. You'd be surprised how quickly they add up. And they really do. And the thing is, you have to stop yourself one purchase at a time. Like, do I really need this? And usually if it's not in your budget, you don't need it. Let's face it. Those McFlurry, a McFlurry's $3.49. Okay? Those are the types of purchases that will add up. If I buy let's just take that for an example. If I buy one of those a week, right? $3.49 a week, that's $7 every 2 weeks. That's $14 a month. For one dessert once a week. Now, like, when you think about that, it's kind of ridiculous.
But if you put in your budget that you are going to have, say, $20 to spend however you wish,
right?
And you decide to spend that $20 on McFlurries, oh well, you've already set aside your fun money, and you use it as you wish, whatever rolls your boat,
Right.
So it's not a joy kill plan here. It's a joy enhancement plan. So
absolutely, it absolutely is.
The big goal of the book is not the debt management part of it. It's the debt management strategy to the end goal. The end goal is to be joyfully generous. And I focus on that, Melanie, because a lot of people say, oh, if I could just have $100,000, I'd be okay. But if you just want to be okay, then if there's an emergency, okay suddenly is no longer okay. And if there is a family member, a close family member who is in dire straits, if you're just okay and you needed to, send a couple dollars their way, suddenly you wouldn't be okay. So we need to be in this place of abundance, this extra, this overflow. My cup runneth over. Your cup is full. Your stuff's taken care of, and the extra doesn't get wasted. It gets moved to where it's best served. And so the goal for me in this journey, because I am on the journey. I've not arrived. I'm on the journey, and I invite people to do the journey with me. The goal is to get to the point where I can be joyfully generous, where giving is no longer painful, because the only place the Bible calls for sacrificial giving, and I challenge anybody to prove me wrong, the only place the Bible calls for sacrificial giving is to God. God is the only one that we fight to. Everything else should be joyful, cheerful, generous. And so the Bible talks about if you have two coats, you can give one. Not you take the one off your back, you go into hypothermia and give it away to someone else. It didn't say that. It said if you had two, you give the one. But the woman who had her last two mites gave it to God. So there's a difference, and the widow who had just enough to make one last cake gave it to the man of God because that was God's instruction. The only place sacrificial giving is requested is to God. Everywhere else is to be joyful, cheerful. God loves a cheerful giver. You're going to be cheerful when you're giving from a place of abundance. And so the idea is not to just have enough money to be okay, but to have more than enough. John 10:10, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. See, a lot of Christians are just stuck in the first part of that, that you have life. Okay, so we have a ticket to heaven. Fabulous. What about the and have that life more abundantly part? You see, a lot of us are living in loss, lack, and less. Loss, lack, and less means the devil has come, killed, stolen, and destroyed. So when you've lost, when you have less, when you're living in lack, that is not a place that Jesus has called us to. He always says, our cup runneth over. He calls us to have life and have it more abundantly. And that doesn't have to be necessarily calculated in dollars and cents. But when you have, and you're enough in, say, South Africa, or in Jamaica, where the dollar is like over 100 to 1, you might be able to have quite a quality of life on far less in Jamaica or in Belize or somewhere else than here. So it's not a dollar amount. It's how much does it take for you to have everything you need. Even going back to when the children of Israel were, in the desert and they were picking up the manna, it said those who picked up a lot had just enough, and those who picked up just a little still had just enough, because it's not about a number or an amount, a dollar amount. It's about what is the amount it takes for you to have your enough. And then the extra is where we can give, and give joyfully and give cheerfully. But from your enough, whatever that is that God has brought to you, we're to give sacrificially the top 10, the best tier to God. And everything else is joyful, generous, cheerful. So we need to move to that place. The whole goal of my book is to move the Christian income earner to become joyfully generous. And debt management is simply a strategy along the way. Becoming outrageously profitable is simply a strategy along the way to get us to the end goal of being joyfully generous. That is the whole goal of that book.
I love it. I think it's beautiful. That's a beautiful goal. It's beautiful. Where can we get the book?
Well, right now it's on Amazon. I haven't put it anywhere else. But
okay.
When
I posted the link.
Available, I know I can release it to bookstores and so forth like that. So for right now it's on Amazon, and today is the last day that they can quote unquote buy my book for $0.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show today. You rocked as usual.
Thank you so much for having me, Melanie.
As expected.
Appreciate
Thank you so much. I appreciate you too. Thank you, everyone who listened to Money Talk with Melanie today, the reboot. Thank you, Marc Schwartz, for being on the show today. Thank you, Trudy Beerman. Thank you, everyone who listened on SHR Media and everyone who listened on Facebook today. You guys absolutely rock. And if you are listening to this as a podcast on any of the mechanisms, the podcast mechanisms, thank you very much. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money. Have a great night.